and gentlemen, my name is Gerard Doherty, and I'm the chairman of this evening's event. And this was a wonderful night. It's the selection of John Cullinane as the Irishman of the Year award, which is sponsored by the Friends of the Kennedy Library. And we welcome you all here tonight to a wonderful night for a wonderful person, for a wonderful tradition. And so I'd like to introduce at this time somebody who really in this area needs no introduction. He's been outstanding in everything he's ever done. In fact, I'm told not to tell any stories, but I will tell one story. My wife and myself, we help out at Thanksgiving and Christmas at his for the homeless at St. Augustine's. And he's man I'm going to introduce is a very exacting person. So the first 2 times I went there, he said, well, you're doing all right. So finally he gave me a reward on the 3rd time I was there. He moved me to a skill position. My job was to move the gravy off the plate. So at this time, we've all heard often about St. Augustine's being a very active political precinct where you can vote perpetually. I'd like to introduce at this time Father Thomas McDonald, the pastor of St. Augustine's in South Boston. Father McDonald.
Why don't we remain seated for grace? God in heaven, as we gather here this evening, we are grateful for our Irish heritage, as well as those of different ethnic backgrounds. In this season of St. Patrick, however, we are grateful for the gift of faith which you have given us. We are grateful for the gifts of care and compassion which are part of our heritage. And above all, we are grateful for the men and women of Irish heritage who stand as models and examples for us to emulate. This evening, we are honoring one of Irish heritage who is truly a model for ourselves and for those who will follow. John Cullinane is a man whose heart is modeled after your own, seemingly infinite in its outreach to so many, especially the poor. As his work in Northern Ireland testifies, he is a man of peace. As Pope Paul VI reminded us, if you seek peace, work for justice. And through providing job opportunities, he is working for this justice. Seeing politics as a way to accomplish good for others, he has not been afraid to immerse himself in this arena. And again, his quiet influence has been a source of good for so many. This evening, we ask you to bless him, his wife Eddy, and their family. May the blessings they have been to so many be a source of your lavish blessings upon them, now and in future years. Bless all of us who are gathered here by bringing us closer to your Son, and bless this food which we are to receive through Christ our Lord. Amen.
As you go on eating, there are some people that I think it's very important that have met John over the years, and I'd like to at least introduce them. But before I do that, I think it's only appropriate that at this time, I'd like to introduce members of his family who are here tonight. Eddy needs no introduction, but everybody has been involved with Eddy doing something, whether it's a black and white or raising money for the library or for the symphony or whatever. But his wife, Eddy, is here with him, obviously. But I'd like tonight to introduce his daughter, Susan, who's studying in medical school. His son, John, and his wife, Sandrine, John Cullinane. his sister Teresa, and her husband Frank Vaughan. Now, during the course of the evening, there are other people I would like to introduce, but I think they understand, and I think you will understand, that we want to keep the program moving, so that please no applause. So I'm going to read off some names of some people who have been involved with John in various and sundry things over these years that John has shared, both his help and his money and his ideas with many other people. There are several of the former recipients of the Irishman in the Year Award here tonight, and some of them are with us. And we have Senator Bulger, we have Joe Moakley, we have Jim Brett, we have Don Dowd, and we have Ted Kennedy, and we have myself. At this time, what I would like to do is introduce to you the real master of ceremony. We really have a great professional who has been a long-time friend of John, and his involvement with John goes back to John's activity on the board at Catholic Memorial. And it's another instance of many of the good works that John has done. But before I introduce the Master of Ceremony, since I talked about Catholic Memorial, I also have to talk about one of the other great good works that John Cullinane did. And he has with him a friend who he greatly helped to make a success of the dedication of the Malden Catholic Gym. I'd like to introduce Sandra and Eddy from the other good school, Malden Catholic. At this time, I would like to present to you somebody who you see who comes into your living room almost every night. He's the anchor man at Channel 5. He's a graduate of Catholic Memorial, and he's a graduate of Holy Cross, and graduate of Harvard Law School. I'd like to present to you at this time a long time and a very good and genuine and sincere friend of John's, Bryan Lee. Bryan?
Thanks, Gerard. I thought we'd start by having anyone who has not had their name announced standing up and giving it to us. Could we start with a table over there? Gerard would be great working for Weight Watchers, wouldn't he? You know, we could just bring him to a dinner, have him talk, and no one would eat. Only kidding, no. It's a pleasure to be here on this occasion for John. I've known John for the last 10 years or so. I know him to be a great businessman, great family man, a great neighbor, and a golfer. I have to have some journalistic integrity and just not throw those adjectives around. You know, on the drive over here, I realized that this is sort of a regular occasion. I feel like sort of the Ed McMahon to Johnny Carson. Last year, I was the MC at a dinner. John was the Irishman of the Year for the Irish Immigration Center. Here we have the John F. Kennedy Foundation, Irishman of the Year. And I was thinking, can you afford all of this praise? But sort of a fundraising joke. But the other thought I had is there will be a lot of praise during the course of the evening. And given the fact that I, too, have Irish Catholic roots, not far removed from the working poor, it was always taught to me that it's important not to have a big head. So how could we make sure that that would not happen during the course of the evening? And who could I dare present to give words of humility on an occasion like this for John, or to try to teach John some humility? And I looked at my bookcase and I realized I have the answer. I had to dig through a few books, but I have John's words himself. I'm sure you all have a copy of this. This is the Entrepreneur's Survival Guide, 101 Tips for Managing in Good Times and Bad, John J. Cullinane. I'm sure he gave it to all of you. You've all read it, haven't you? I have. In fact, I marked when I read this a couple of years ago, page 167. You know the story of Cullinane Software, the first software company to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange, a $1 billion concern. I guess the zeros get added over the years. But we have here on page 167, this is the year before Cullinane went public. John is walking the hallways, and of course this is a pretty heady time, I would imagine, for someone who started a business like this. And it's at certain private moments he must have allowed himself some selfish thoughts like, damn, I must be good, you know. But then one day in 1977, he bumped into one of his vice presidents who asked him, so John says in his own words, asked me the following question: what is it that you do here anyway? You know, I never thought that I had anything in common with John Cullinane, but I can't tell you the number of times my boss tells me that when he sees me in the corridor. And the next time he asked, why are you playing golf and not watching this presidential press conference, I can just say, people misunderstood John Cullinane too. But he did know what he was doing. There will be, as I said, plenty of praise tonight, and deservedly so, and I would like to begin and introduce some of the people who have taken the time out to come tonight. First of all, I'd like to introduce, how should I put this? Maybe if the Patriots had an offensive lineman with Joe Moakley's blocking ability, they would be the Super Bowl champs today. A friend of John Cullinane, Congressman Joe Moakley.
Well, if anybody's got the land and the desire to build a stadium, I know we can get the plans very cheap. Actually, after Bob Kraft and I had our heart-to-heart talk, just to show there were no hard feelings, he said, Joe, anytime you want to see a football game, he says, call me, I've got 2 seats for you on the 150-yard line. But I think everything ended the way it was supposed to, and hopefully that we will get a stadium here in Massachusetts, and not too far away from South Boston, but just far away enough from South Boston. But it's my great pleasure to be here this evening with so many dear friends to recognize the Irishman of the Year. And I'd like to say a few things about the Irishman of the Year award. I remember how deeply I was honored when I received this award, because of this night is all about the Irishman of the Year. Yes, it's about being Irish, and it's about being proud of the heritage that we share. But it's also a time when we come together to recognize somebody not just for their individual accomplishments, but what they have given back to the community and for how they have improved the world around them. There is no finer example of an Irishman giving back than John Cullinane. John's successes in business are legendary. In the cutting edge of highly competitive field of computer software, John Cullinane is a visionary. For most people, such an extraordinary career would be enough, but not for John. John Cullinane has committed his considerable talents to improving the world around him, and especially in improving life in Ireland. In Massachusetts, we know John as a former chairman of the board of the John F. Kennedy Library, a great benefactor of the Boston Public Library, and founder of the Massachusetts Software Council. I know him as a trusted friend, a person who shapes the Democratic Party's platform on issues relating to business and economic development. But of all of John's many accomplishments, when I say many, perhaps what is most important is what he has done and what he is doing for the people of Ireland. John Cullinane has made substantial investments in Irish companies and has committed his considerable expertise to helping those Irish firms succeed. He is committed to a job creation and to improving the Irish economy, and he is truly a force for peace in Ireland. I thank you for allowing me to participate in this night's festivities. For a most deserving Irishman of the Year, our friend, John Cullinane. Thank you.
Congressman, thanks. At first, I thought this might be awkward, as a journalist and a member of Congress participating in the event tonight, and of course, with the Lincoln bedroom controversy arriving, I was concerned when the list came out earlier this week that maybe John's name would be on the list of people that had been at the Lincoln bedroom. I think the media have gotten that story all wrong over the last few days or so. To me, the interesting thing is not the fact that the invitation went out. It's the fact that the invitation was accepted. A couple of years ago, I had the pleasure of having a dinner with Jay Siegel, who is one of the great amateur golfers in our generation, and now is a leading money winner on the PGA Senior Tour. And Jay said that one day out of the blue, about 7 years ago, he got a call from then President Bush, who said, "Jay, I've been watching you on television. I admire your athleticism. I'd like to have you come down to the White House and spend the weekend." Jay said he went down to the White House and was given these presidential pajamas. They had the presidential insignia on the pajamas, and he had a wonderful time. And I remember saying to Jay, let me get this straight. A total stranger, someone you've never met, calls you up, says, "I've been watching you on television. I admire you. I bought some pajamas. I'd like you to come down for the weekend." And you went? I mean, imagine it's like Mayor Tom Menino calling me up someday and saying, "Bryan, I've admired your work. I've just hustled off to Filene's basement at noontime. I got you some PJs. Would you come spend the night at the Parkman House?" I don't think so. But fortunately, John's name was not on the list. Now, John was very pleasantly surprised and delighted when he was told that our next guest would be able to interrupt her very busy schedule, and that's an understatement, as a wife, a mother, a lawyer, an author, to come to Massachusetts for this very special night. We are truly honored to have with us tonight the president of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation, Caroline Kennedy.
Good evening. Teddy first got me involved with the library shortly after it was built, and we were facing many questions about its future. We knew we needed to find people to help us, people who were part of the Boston community and part of the new business community, people who were not part of our family, people who believed in public service and the ideals of John and Robert Kennedy, people who were open to the world, and people who had a vision for the future and for the future of this library and could take the library there. Then Steve Smith and I met John Cullinane, and we realized we had found it all in one person. John was the first chairman of the Library Foundation, and I learned a lot working with him. As all of you know, he combines patience with determination, compassion with judgment, and above all, he always relies on Diddy. I learned something else from John that I never knew growing up in my own family, which is that you don't have to do the most talking to get a lot accomplished. This room would not be here if it wasn't for John, and there would be no food in this library if it wasn't for him. Without his vision, most importantly, there would be no Kennedy Library Corps, which is linking this institution to its community and getting young people involved in public service. Nelson Mandela and Mikhail Gorbachev would not have come here, and the upcoming visit of the King and Queen of Spain would not be possible without John and Diddy's generosity. They saw what this library should stand for, and thanks to them and to many of you here in this room, after a very short period of time, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Now we have the dueling Senate presidents. We have present and past, starting us off. And you know there is singing at the end of the evening, so perhaps we can continue this duel thing a little bit later. I haven't heard Senator Birmingham's voice yet, and we're all dying to hear it, aren't we? We're delighted to have with us the president of the Massachusetts Senate President Thomas Birmingham. Senator.
Now, that rapt silence must suggest you believe I'm actually going to sing. Not a chance. I didn't even know I was supposed to speak tonight. I noticed that Carolyn Kennedy and Congressman Moakley had some well-structured and coherent remarks. I got my invitation to this event from Gerard Doherty, who can at times be, maybe we say, slightly elliptical. It has been said of him that he says the rosary in code. So I thought the only decision I had to make tonight was salmon or corned beef. Isn't it great, corned beef in March? First corned beef dinner of the season. Feel like you've just eaten a winter coat. No disrespect meant to the caterers. There's only so much that one can do. So I have no prepared remarks, and normally unaccustomed as I am to public speech, I would be quite daunted by this prospect. But since I'm standing in a room which is only slightly smaller than the office that I inherited from William Bulger, I feel reasonably comfortable before you. The Lincoln bedroom's got nothing on us. John Cullinane has been a friend and an ally, and I suspect what we have most in common is his daughter Suzanne, and my daughters are avid hockey players, and we just made that connection earlier this evening. But John has been a tremendous personal supporter. He's been supporter of libraries in the plural. He's been a great friend to the Democratic Party. And I think that one can try to pontificate about what it means to be Irish, but John Cullinane is the son of Irish immigrants. He's met with great financial success. He's a businessman of rare acumen, but more than anything else, for all of his own success, he recognizes that we're not just an economy, we are a society with mutual rights and responsibilities, and John Cullinane has always demonstrated the clearest sense of his own social responsibilities, and for that reason, John, you have done yourself proud. We in turn are proud of you, and all of us join in congratulating you on this well-deserved honor this evening. Thank you for having me.
For those of you who think that those one-liners were extemporaneous, I have on my script. Please introduce Senate President Thomas Birmingham. What do you think? Did he went out after the dessert or after the dinner and typed this up for me? We have another shrinking violet Senate President with us. Former Senate President and the President of the University of Massachusetts, President William Bulger.
Shrinking violet, boy wonder. You used to be on the television where no one can talk back. It's different tonight. And oh, Cullinane, look at him all swelled up over there. I think it's wonderful that they're giving you the Irishman of the Year award. Big deal. I received that award, and I'm Polish. And I never told anybody, but now I can tell them, because I'm on the campus at UMass. I'm whatever the crowd happened to be. But I think I know what we should do. Everyone knows John Cullinane as a top-notch individual. I remember a few years ago when, as Caroline said it, he was asked to take over as the head of the foundation here. And a few years later, I asked him in my office. I asked him up to my office. I didn't tell him why, But seated in my office were two members of the boards of trustees, I and one William Taylor, who runs a little newspaper in this town. And we asked him if he'd be the chairman of the Foundation for the Boston Public Library, and he said yes. And he raised $18 million for the library. This man should be the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I nominate him. And Ted, I want you to tell that nephew of yours. He's a young man, and he can come along later. We have term limits in Massachusetts. Of course, Moakley, who has, liver, kidneys, now he has a hip. He has so many parts from other people that term limits does not apply to Joe Moakley. Dear God. And I'm going to give you some advice. If you're running, thank you very much. I suppose you're the Globe Spotlight team. You know, you can't be the Globe Spotlight team. He doesn't have a palm frond in front of the camera. You're always getting a picture through the... But, no, I think it's great. And I'd like you to be... Oh, and by the way, I'm not going to be doing that St. Patrick's Day thing anymore. I've sworn off all humor. I have the British consul is here, Jim Poston. Every year I look forward to having the British consul for breakfast. And didn't we devour you? It was great. Jim and I were just in Ireland. We met John Hume over there. By the way, speaking of charities, of John Cullinane, another one down on the Falls Road in the city of Belfast is a wonderful little Irish-speaking school. And who do you think its chief benefactor is? I was there at the school a couple of days ago, and boy, you mentioned the name John Cullinane, they all but bow their head. And we had met there with Jerry Adams, I believe, a couple of years ago, in I think December of 1994, John and ourselves. And John Cullinane, it's little known, but you've been a wonderful benefactor of that great little struggling institution, that little Irish-speaking enclave down there. And for that, we're all grateful to you, and we admire you for it. And you, if you could, look, if Clinton, if he can win, all you know what we're going to do? We're going to get you a gubernatorial mansion. You put a board Fulcher sign outside and establish your first Irish B&B in Boston. And wouldn't that be something for fundraising? These are little ideas I'm giving you. Not to get you into trouble. I'm sure the Globe is not here tonight, but another thing, try to get along with them. One night I said that the Globe was nothing but the Herald with verbs. And Wacko Hurley says to Dapper O'Neill, what's a verb? And Wacko Hurley says, a guy from the Balkans. One thing you don't do, John, you don't talk issues. Learn to sing a couple of Irish songs and always have someone there who, when they say, oh, what about taxes or something like that, your pal, like little Dinny Galvin used to do for me, stands up and you just shut up, Bulger, sing another Irish song. Show me a candidate who talks issues and I'll show you a candidate who won't be back. Look, it's a great night to be here. I mentioned those little things about John. I know you know them all, the foundation here at the Kennedy Library, the wonderful charity that he has shown down in Belfast and other places. John Hume could attest to many of his and who could do more for people than John has with the creation of work and industry in Ireland. You've been great, and even Gerard Doherty. He speaks. Joe Birmingham. You're right. You're right about Gerard. He speaks in parables. A friend of yours called a friend of mine. He says, If you can put 14,000 votes together by calling Joe, you wonder, when can I ask, who's Joe? I have never understood Jerry. It is another good idea. Talk like that. They think you're smart. You can even talk on the car phone. So thanks a lot for letting me say a couple of words about our good pal, John. Thank you very much.
President Balger, thank you. Surprised you were able to make it. Your office was under siege, I understand, this week out in Amherst. Glad you could extricate yourself to be here. Some of you, when I mentioned the book a little while ago, were a little sheepish that you hadn't read it. I know you were thinking, let's wait for the movie to come out. Well, the movie has come out. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and we have both for you tonight a retrospective look at some of the highlights of John's career and some comments about it in John's own words.
Margaret Fitzgerald and David Cullinane came from the beautiful southeast corner of Ireland known as Dunmore East, an area of green hills and a picturesque fishing village not unlike Chatham, Massachusetts. Married in a cathedral in nearby Tremor, they then came to America, as so many Irish people had done before them, to find greater economic opportunities for themselves and their children to come. Arriving just in time for the Great Depression, the challenges they faced were many, including raising 5 children, 2 of whom suffered severe illnesses. Their legacy included strong values of hard work, honesty, faith in God, and the importance of education. John, the middle child, was blessed with 2 older caring sisters, Mary and Teresa, who looked after him while their mother and father worked. After a number of anxious years, he began to show some direction by managing to get accepted at Northeastern University, the most important career decision he ever made in his life. It led to a co-op program job, working on computers at a time when this industry was in its infancy. He created the first firm specializing in computer software products. John explains.
We received a call from an organization in New Jersey, a bank, who wanted us to develop an identical system to this one we had just finished. And I said at the time, why don't we just sell them this system that we've finished? Okay. Which may not seem like a very imaginative idea in 1991, but in 1963 or 2 it was. And so when you look at the advantages, I said, gee, this is the way to do business, you know.
The success of the project planted the seed of entrepreneurship in Cullinane. The motivation for striking out on his own came when his efforts for his employer produced unexpectedly large results. He was selected for the company's Outstanding Performance Award. The award turned out to be a total of $500, paid out over 3 years. It was time to leave.
We raised $480,000 on Wall Street, you know, for 40% of the equity. Within 2 years, we had $500 left in the bank. We had a payroll due that day, and $8,500. A check came in literally that day for $8,500. We were going out of business, and I remember, you know, having to think long and hard to come up with a solution.
He turned the company around, and the Cullinane Corporation went on to be, according to Forbes magazine, the most successful company any venture capitalist invested in between the years 1978 and 1985. It was also the first software company to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange and the first software company to reach $1 billion in valuation. It was to be the model for all subsequent software companies to try and emulate. Of course, the most important decision that was ever made, according to John, was when Diddy decided to marry him. John met Diddy on Cape Cod, and from that first meeting, she has always been the love of his life, his best friend, and the source of much encouragement and sound advice throughout the years, such as when John wanted to start his business. Diddy replied, "Go ahead and do it. If it doesn't work out, I can always teach." She also suggested that John's mother might enjoy going on the company's annual User Weeks trips to top resorts from Florida to California. John then added Diddy's mother to the trips, and these two remarkable, hard-working women, both in their 80s, enjoyed the best accommodations and luxuries that our finest resorts had to offer. They became celebrities in their own right, beloved and commanding much attention from all who came. By 1983, John was looking for new things to do. When he was approached by Stephen Smith and Jack Fallon to join the newly created John F. Kennedy Library Foundation, he readily accepted because he had always admired John and Robert Kennedy and the views they espoused. He was particularly honored when asked to chair the foundation, which he did for 7 years. He continues to be a part of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation through its Distinguished Foreign Visitors Program. Subsequently, he was asked to raise money for the Boston Public Library.
And I was asked to do that by the Senate President and William Taylor. And when two people as respected and admired as these two individuals are.
John used the JFK Library Foundation as the model for the highly successful Boston Public Library Foundation. Another proud moment was the dedication of the David and Margaret Fitzgerald Cullinane Hall at Northeastern University. Named in honor of his parents and their dedication to hard work and the recognition for the need of a good education. Most importantly, John and Diddy have two wonderful children. John, a vice president of a venture capital firm, and Suzanne, a second-year student at Columbia Medical School, and a lovely new daughter-in-law, Sandrine. Family, wife, and children continue to be his never-ending priority. He never missed a sporting event or went on extended business trips. Whether as a son, brother, brother-in-law, husband, father, or friend, he never failed to appreciate the value of the people in his life or their importance to him. This he expresses in countless ways, and whether through public or private generosity, it is at the center of his character.
Well, John, having sat 2 inches away from that screen, I can tell you, you are larger than life. Yeah. Happened a couple of years ago at the Lion King, too. But we're honored to have with us a man tonight who's a great friend of John's, and a man who has done an awful lot, of course, for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the senior senator of the Commonwealth, Senator Edward Kennedy. Senator?
Thank you very much, Bryan, for being here this evening and for the wonderful words and presentations that you have meant. Let me thank some very good and dear and valued friends that have been real anchors here at the library once again for making this such a really special and extraordinary evening. Chuck Daly, who was there in the White House with President Kennedy, Don Dowd, who really was one of the originator, I think, of these annual dinners, and who's been such a wonderful friend to all of us. Paul Kirk, who continues to lead this library and bring it and make it the kind of institution that all of the members of the family would hope that it would be, and continues to provide that great leadership. We are, all of us, I know I speak for Caroline and certainly for myself, thankful for all of the wonderful things that they have done, and certainly one of the very special things that they have done is bringing us this very extraordinary couple. We honor the Irishman of the Year but as Paul said so well, it is really the Irish couple of the year. John Cullinane and Diddy Cullinane are a team in everything that they have done, and they honor us as well as members of their family that have joined with us. What a remarkable family and what extraordinary individuals. We've heard much about them this evening, but for all of us in our family, we feel so blessed over the period of the life of this institution that they have been there really from the very beginning. I must say, just before mentioning some of the remarkable aspects of their contributions to this evening, I would like to just recognize some very special individuals that also are here this evening, because has been mentioned tonight, one of the very important causes that John Cullinane has had is about trying to move those forces that are out there in the northern part of Ireland that are committed towards a real peace and justice, respecting different traditions in the north. We have three very special members, two from the SDLP, John Hume, who we have known and most of us know and respect so much for the moral courage and also for the physical courage. I first came to know or hear about John when he lay down in front of a tank that was moving right towards him and stopped 6 inches away from him in front of his wife and children. And then the rest has been a history and a wonderful, warm relationship with him. Alec Atwood, who's here as well, and I want to thank him for being here. Bill Hutchison, who represents a different tradition, the Loyalist tradition, represents the Progressive Union Party. And Mr. Hutchison, we want to thank you very much for being here. And with the Loyalists who have continued their ceasefire, I hope you'll take back to Northern Ireland our enormous respect for you and for your associates. That when the IRA went back to the bullet, that you have not done so. And all of us, whether it's tonight, or whether it's John Cullinane or others, continue to ask for the ceasefire from the IRA. We asked for it tonight, we asked for it yesterday, we asked for it tomorrow. We understand full well that there'll never be peace in the North until there is a resumption. But we thank you very much for being here this evening and for what you have done. Maybe you'd stand, Bill. Bill, can... Something else about Bill and Alex is they are running the Boston Marathon, and they competed last year, and they're out there again. I think as marathon runners, they know what a long distance is all about, and we hope that that distance, certainly with regards to peace in the North, won't be any more difficult than the challenges that they have faced on that marathon. Let me also thank John for what he has done in the North. It's been referenced here this evening, but I can remember very well having conversations when we first had some hope for Northern Ireland, when the leadership of John and Hume and Jerry Adams had, and also with the strong support of the British government and President Clinton, had moved us into a situation that put the ceasefire in place. And I remember seeing John just within the few days of the announcement of that occasion, and he was quietly asking, as he does so often in the back of a hall, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? And he brought to that situation his very unique experience, his understanding that when you have an 80% unemployment in a particular area, that the opportunities for social justice, economic progress are more remote and more difficult, clearly. The tensions build, the opportunities for alternatives to the violence are not great. And today, as Bill Bulger has pointed out, not only are there schools, but we have seen the investment of a very important and significant American Irish fund that is working effectively and investing successfully and very much involved in expanded employment for both Catholic and Protestants and bringing new technologies to the North, and in that way expanding not only the job opportunities in the North, which is the primary purpose, but clearly aiding those communities in terms of the economy, helping those companies, and also helping Massachusetts and New England and other companies around this country that he is interested. A very important contribution, and when the final time comes when hopefully we will be moving and celebrating a time for peace, John Cullinane will be known as one of the important peacemakers, not just the Irishman of the year, but as a peacemaker in the North, and that is something that I think all of us admire and respect. In the beginning, as Caroline has pointed out, John was really there right at the very start, working with Steve Smith, who's for all of us here, I believe, this evening, knows was another brother to all of the Kennedys brothers, and what a magnificent job he did at a very early time in building support and helping and assisting so many aspects of this library and making it the institution which is far beyond just the bricks and the mortar, but something that is alive, touching the lives of young students who are in the library corps and working in the community, letting the community in South Boston and Dorchester know that this is something that is part of their community as well, and also very much involved in the support of our Profile and Courage efforts here, and most importantly, as Caroline has mentioned, in giving an opportunity for extraordinary men and women, those that have been honored by their governments to represent their nations, and also those that are outside of their government, as at that time Nelson Mandela was, or those just coming into power who had experienced years in prison, as Václav Havel did when he was there, and at the time that they brought down the wall in the term of Czechoslovakia, and still not duly recognized and elected in Czechoslovakia, but was here speaking about the inspiration of the book that President Kennedy wrote, The Profile in Courage. And I remember when Václav Havel came to this country and wrote to me a note that he wanted to meet, because he said that one of the greatest sources of strength that he had as he was in prison half of his life was the fact that he had read The Profile in Courage, and hoped that if by some means that he was provided the opportunities of leadership for his country, that he would have the strength to make those kinds of decisions and determinations which President Kennedy talked about, and how he welcomed and sought the opportunity to be here at President Kennedy's library. And that is the kind of echoes, that ripples of hope that we hope that can go from this library, a Nelson Mandela, a Václav Havel, a Gorbachev, Mary Robinson, and the list goes on. So we thank you so much, John and Diddy and the Cullinane family, for what you've done in offering up opportunities for these extraordinary individuals to speak their truth to the power in their own country that are resisting the movement towards democratic institutions, and their opportunity to speak to those here in Boston and Massachusetts and the larger audience. It's something which has been enormously important from their point of view, and I think all of us have benefited. So we're grateful to you for all of these contributions. In St. Paul's Church in London, there's Christopher Wren is buried there, and in his monument they asked, what was his greatest monument? And the words are, just look around you. And I think for all of us in Boston, for all of us here at this library, and for all of us that care about this city, whether it's the Boston Library, or whether it's those young children, or whether it's those leaders who are trying to lead their country and trying to share their sense of history and their desire for their nations with our people here in Massachusetts in so many different ways, or whether it's to try and show that one of the primary beliefs of President Kennedy, that everyone can make a difference and each of us should try, and making that difference in Northern Ireland, at least giving a sense of hope to many hundreds, and perhaps it's up to thousands now, John, men and women that might not know John and Diddy Cullinane's name, but know that because they can work, they have a sense of hope for themselves and for their future, and are willing to try and move ahead in the cause for peace and reconciliation. So many different ways it made such a special difference. And in that way, carry through what President Kennedy had said, that each of us has some responsibility to try and make a difference, and all of us should make that commitment. Earlier in the evening, Chuck Daly read those wonderful lines of President Kennedy in the speech to the Irish Parliament, a quote that we all agree does justice to describing his own passion and commitment. We want you and Diddy to have a more permanent remembrance of this evening and of our affection and respect for you, and therefore it's our honor, mine, and maybe Caroline would join me as well in presenting you this plaque inscribed with those words next to a photo of President Kennedy during his visit to Ireland. So I'd ask if John and Diddy would come up here, and Caroline would just come on up, and our Irishman of the Year, our Irish couple of the year. Okay. Good. Okay. Here, John. Here we go. Come on in. Here. Okay. Look at there. Very, very good. Fine. Good. Very good. Fine. Okay. Great. Great. Fine. Thanks. Okay. You're up.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Is there anybody in this world more gracious and kinder than Senator Kennedy? Let's hear an award, applause for the senator. You're looking more presidential every day, Senator. And Caroline, I want to thank you very, very much for coming. And when Diddy told me that you were coming, I just somehow knew you would. As I said earlier, the Kennedys have a quality about them that is really outstanding, and that is that if you do something for them or try to help them in any way, they always want to return the favor. And it seems to be a characteristic that every member of the Kennedy family has. So I thank you very much for coming. And I know that both you and Suzanne may have to scoot out to catch the last flight back to New York. So if you have to leave, I will be saddened, but I bid you good farewell. I also want to thank Diddy, a special thanks, the most beautiful and wonderful girl that I've ever met in my whole life. And and it was the best thing I ever did when I married her, and she seems to agree with that. So I'm so a lot of people felt that they would like Diddy to be a co-recipient of this award, but Diddy really prefers to be on the producing side of any event. She really loves to help and do all these things and have them all come out right. And at the same time, I remember another time when we were co-recipients of an award. It was at the Paul Tsongas Award about 10 years ago or more at the Democratic State Committee. And I worked very hard preparing a good talk in quite honor of Paul Kirk, I might add. And it went over very well. But on the way down in the car, Diddy wrote this talk on the back of an envelope. And got up and gave this like incredible speech, you know. That was like a second Gettysburg Address or something like that. You know, and people were awed. The audience gave her a standing ovation, and afterwards they said, "Gee, John, you were really good, but Diddy was great," you know. So, anyhow, when I was growing up, I never received any awards that I can remember. Billy Fay, my oldest friend from 4 years ago, and the town historian, Bill, did I ever receive an award for anything that you can remember? But I certainly received a number of negative awards, which I will not go into at this moment in time, but gave my parents and others some concern. But I think that's why it's really, as years went by, I didn't get any awards either. And then my company was very successful, and the stock kept splitting all the time, and then I got a lot of awards. and then the stock went the other way, and I got no awards, you know. So anyhow, so to receive an award like this from the Friends is really, you know, makes me really feel good, and because I know they really care deeply about the library, and they're the real true keepers of the flame. And then I looked at the people that are attending tonight, and that made me really feel good. So Don Dowd and the Friends of the John F. Kennedy Library, I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for a really wonderful event, and I'm pleased to be the 1997 Friends of the Irishman of the Year. Thank you very much indeed. I don't know, Bryan Lee, are you driving home the Southeast Expressway on the way home? Would you look at that Lou Nicanillo Ackley billboard on the left as you pass? You'll be very impressed. Don't go off the road, all right? So thank you, Lou Nicanillo, for that wonderful billboard. I'm getting out of town in a couple of days, so but I'm pleased to have it, to say the least. You know, when I talked to Diddy, you know, about what I was going to say, she kept saying, "Well, geez, you can't say that," you know. And then I go the next thing, you say, "You can't say that," you know. And then, "Geez, you can't say that." And I said, "Well, I'm going to tell this joke." And he says, "You're not going to tell that joke again, are you?" And I said, "Well, if Mr. Bulger can tell his jokes more than once, I can tell mine." So anyway, it has to do with this. Tim and Bridget came from the old country, and poor Tim never had anything, never learned how to do anything, never learned how to read or write or what have you. And finally, someone got him a job down at the pier, and he drank too much, he fell off, and he drowned. And the stevedore union came up with a fund, $5,000 for Tim, for Bridget rather, and went to the wake. And Bridget's sitting there with her little friend Delia. Delia is one of those little people that sees all and says nothing, little shawl on the bun and all that kind of stuff. And when the stevedore head of the stevedore gave Bridget the $5,000, she said, "Oh, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, $5,000, you know. My God, what Tim and me, we never had two nickels to rub together, and now $5,000, you know." Poor Tim, he never learned how to do anything. He never learned how to read and write. He never learned anything. And little Delia leaned over and said, "Well, it's a good thing he never learned how to swim." Is that? That's another fundraising joke, you know. So anyhow, in 1993, Stephen Fallon and Stephen Smith and Jack Fallon asked me to chair, or asked me to join the board and then to chair, and I was enormously impressed. I didn't know the Kennedys. I just knew it was a very large, complex family and how to get consensus or what have you. And the first couple of directors, one was Mark Roosevelt, and Karen Wilson is here tonight. And I thought about, they asked me what they should do, and I thought about it, and then I said, why don't we just do things the way John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy would have liked them, even though none of us had actually met them. And first, Mark Roosevelt, you know, created the JFK Library Corps, which has been an enormous success. And Karen Wilson was the pups on the point, and that night we did a special surprise party for Stephen Smith that I know he greatly appreciated, and then we had the first annual dinner. It was like a state dinner in the White House. Isaac Stern was the soloist. Jackie Onassis Kennedy just loved it. Everybody in the Kennedy family liked it without exception, which I guess was unusual. McGeorge Bundy said afterwards it was the finest Kennedy event he'd ever been to in his life. We had the International Visiting Dignitary Series that that Senator Edward Kennedy began. One I remember was the Prime Minister of Italy, Giovanni Goria, and I remember sitting at a table just like they are now, and Diddy was sitting between the Prime Minister and Senator Kennedy, and they had an interpreter. And as the evening wore on, I kept looking, and at first Diddy wasn't saying anything. As the evening wore on, then she's starting to speak, and at the end of the evening, they're shaking their heads up and down, and I'm wondering what Diddy's doing in international politics, and she was advising them on something to do on islands in the Mediterranean or what have you. But and then there was the visit by Nelson Mandela, which was just an absolutely spectacular evening. I mean, the incredible list of people in attendance. I mean, we grew up in Arlington with Billy Doherty, who sang nothing but calypso songs, and to look down and see Harry Belafonte in the audience, and it was just spectacular. And then I sat at a table that included Nelson Mandela, but also Stevie Wonder. And as you know, Stevie is blind, and I didn't quite know what to say to him. And then I said, well, you know, thanks to Senator Kennedy, Stevie, you and I got kissed by a pretty girl one night at the Kennedy Center Awards. And, I mean, this is a very innocent story, I might add, but I don't know if I should finish it or not. But anyhow, we had this table, and there's a wonderful black young girl who I asked her, I said, gee, you know, if you looked around the room, you saw like Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder and all these fantastic people. You know, you had to have a big name to even be and be a little name in this room in the Kennedy Center, and it was just a spectacular evening, to say the least. And so I asked the young lady, I said, have you met any of the stars? And she said, oh no, we couldn't. We're not allowed to meet any of them. And I said, would you like to? And she wouldn't even say that. And then, you know, as an entrepreneurial type, you know, this is a little challenge. And then Senator Kennedy came over and said, who would like to meet Stevie Wonder? And I pointed at a black waitress, and he took her by the arm and marched her right up. And then I could see the group part, and she stood up and kissed Stevie Wonder on the cheek. And in the meantime, she handed Senator Kennedy a stack of dirty dishes. Okay? And he's standing in the middle of the Kennedy Center with all of these incredibly powerful people, and he's looking at these dirty dishes. I could see him, but he says, what am I doing here? And then you could see, he said, what's the heck? It's no big deal. And it was a really beguiling moment. You could just see it unfolding. And then she came back, and I said, did you know what you did with those dishes, you know, when you kissed Stevie Wonder? She said, no. I said, you gave him to Senator Kennedy to hold. She said, oh, my God. I said, don't worry. I said, he doesn't care, you know. And she said, oh, he's so nice. He says, my mother just loves Senator Kennedy, you know. And then I said, do you know who told him to do that? And she said, no. And I pointed at myself, and I felt really shamefully embarrassed by such self-promotion and so forth. And I turned away, and I felt this little kiss on the cheek. Anyhow, thanks to Senator Kennedy, Stevie Wonder and I got kissed by a pretty girl. Okay, so thank you, Senator. Peace broke out in Northern Ireland 2.5 years ago, and Joe Kennedy asked me to do something economically, and I thought about what we could do and some of the deals the United States has had with Israel. Then I got a call from Senator Kennedy to co-host a session with Jerry Adams. I said, look, if Yasser Arafat can come to this country, why not Jerry Adams? Then I got a call from Frank Costello to meet with a group of people coming from Belfast as a counter to Jerry Adams's trip. Next day, I got a call from Governor Well to chair a trade mission to Ireland and Northern Ireland. And right in the middle, I'm in the throes of all this Irish activity. My parents were from Ireland, but I'd never been there up until a few years ago. And I met with 41 Irish software entrepreneurs when I did. And I wasn't looking forward to it when I did because I didn't think they would be very good. I met them, and they were outstanding. In fact, one went public about a week ago on NASDAQ, and they raised $140 million, Iona Technologies. And I came away enormously impressed. How could this be? I met with the presidents of 3 universities, and it became obvious to me that Ireland has one of the great educational systems in the world. And I also was promoting that tie with Israel, because I think there's great opportunities between Israel, the Ireland, and the United States. In May of this year, we'll be putting on a conference at the Harvard Business School, along with Sloan School of MIT, entitled Investment Opportunities in Israel and Ireland, two emerging high-tech superstars in a global economy. We'll be doing that with Jim O'Brien, Phil Cahoon of Acusa, Dan Edelman of New England Israel Chamber of Commerce, and myself. And as I say, that's chutzpah, and I guess in Gaelic they call it mishnak. Is that the right, John Hume? Courage to do something like that, but I think it's going to work out extremely. There's great interest, to say the least. And now, let me just make a couple of other comments too, regarding my mother. She and father. I mean, she worked at Harvard, and she would have been enormously impressed to know that the first Nobel laureate in literature at Harvard in its history was an Irishman, Seamus Heaney, and that they had a Celtic Studies program that's been in business 100 years. She would also be pleased to know that her brother, who died in a ship, in an English ship off of Northern Ireland. I was invited to Hillsborough Castle by Baroness Denton, and they were honoring soldiers of World War II, and I wore my uncle Walter Fitzgerald's medal at that time, and was pleased to do so. My mother was really an outstanding person, to say the least. So at this moment in time, I would like to ask Alex Atwood and Billy Hutchison. Would you come up on the stage for a moment? In addition to John Hume, these are two courageous people as well. And the way I can describe Northern Ireland is the best I can do is it's like there's two roads. There's the Shankill, which is the loyalist, and the Falls, which is the Catholic. It's like Bobby Orr lived on the Shankill, and William Bulger lived on the Falls. And you go there and you meet these absolutely outstanding people on both sides. In many cases, they never met each other, and Lord forbid that they ever get in action against each other. But these are two individuals, courageous beyond belief in their own right, who have reached across that road. And that's really, this man is an Irishman, and this man is a Northern Irishman, okay? And these are real Irishmen of the first order, and I'm an imposter, so.
I've been very impressed by the American politicians tonight. I'm not sure whether they want to be politicians or Bob Hopes, but I'm not going to try and tell any jokes, but I do want to say something about John, because the first time I met John, he reminded me of something which President Kennedy once said, and I think he epitomizes the statement that President Kennedy made, and that was about it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. And I remember we went for breakfast one morning, and we were going on at him about people investing in Ireland, and North and South. And he said, look, do it for yourself. These people won't be expecting to give out charity, they'll be expecting to make profit, so you have to encourage them. And he said to us, here's what you need to do. Tell me what it is about Belfast or about anywhere else in Ireland while people would invest. So started talking about the things, and he lifted up a napkin and he wrote on it 6 things, and he says, there's your development plan. He says, now go and get 50 people and bring them to Ireland, and those 50 people will invest. And each time one invests, they'll get somebody else to invest. So your target's 50 people. I'm pleased to tell John now that we're still looking for 47.
The Senator Kennedy mentioned earlier that Billy and myself did the Boston Marathon last May, but my second sporting thrill of last year was when I played golf at Brookline with John Cullinane last November. I hope we'll do it again sometime, John, soon. But I remember on the 5th fairway, and it was the 5th fairway, and John said something that struck me then and strikes me tonight, and that is, he said that he believed that when you brought good people together, good things happened. Now, I think in this hall, the people understand what John meant by that better than I can explain. But on behalf of Billy and myself and people in Belfast and beyond, I think I can explain a little bit about what that has meant to us in Belfast. I think it's meant a number of things, and John represents those things. The first is that together with the late Ron Brown and Chuck Meisner and Frank Costello, John Cullinane characterises American commitment and affection and activity in Ireland. And he personally, along with those other men, represents that. And that's very important to us. I think secondly, and Billy could confirm this better than I, that at difficult times in recent days in Northern Ireland, John's private contacts and personal calls have stabilised or helped stabilise a very uncertain situation. And the third thing I think that John has contributed personally and on behalf of people in America is that he's explained to us in Belfast how we position ourselves in the global market, how we have access to the European market, how we have a skills base, how we have a manufacturing tradition, and how we have a quality of life that is attractive to investors from America and elsewhere. And that tonight, in coming to Boston from Belfast, Billy and myself wish to affirm those values that John articulates, that we wish to confirm and commend in what he has said, and that ultimately we want to affirm that when he says that when you bring good people together, good things happen, I think tonight is an astounding testimony to the validity of that value. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Actually, the mention of playing golf at Brookline reminds me of a great story. John invited me out to play a couple of years ago, and at the time he was whining about raising all this money for the Democrats and having a difficult time getting some sort of phone call placed to the White House. I forget what it was, but just at that moment, one of the caddies came over, Tommy, I can't think of Tommy's last name, who announced that he was leaving his caddying because he had just been named, because of his work for the Clinton campaign in Manchester, New Hampshire. He had just been named the Deputy Undersecretary of Interior for Space and Oceans. And John couldn't get his phone calls placed. But anyway, it was a great, ironic moment. Just one brief personal note. A couple of years ago, I was at a soccer field in Dedham, and Don Chiafaro, who developed International Place, happened to come by. His daughter was playing for the opposing team, and we had a little conversation. And at a certain point, I don't know what prompted him to do so, he asked me, who are your heroes? I thought it was kind of an odd question at a kid's soccer game, and I never really considered the question before. And I answered quickly, who's your hero? Who would you consider to be a hero? I mentioned John Cullinane, and well, I won't go into the reasons why. I think you heard all the reasons tonight, but there are countless reasons why. Now, no Irish celebration is complete without a few Irish songs, and we're fortunate to have with us tonight Joe Policelli, the Assistant Music Director of St. Paul's Church in Cambridge. It was your mother, I assume. Joe will be at the piano, who will accompany the wonderful young tenor Richard Monroe singing some of our favorite Irish melodies. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Monroe and Joe Policelli.
again, Kathleen, across the ocean wild and wide, to where your heart has ever been, since first you were my bonny bride. The roses all have left your cheek, I've watched them fade away and die. Your voice is sad whene'er you speak, and tears bedim your loving eyes. Oh, I will take you back, Kathleen, to where your heart will feel no pain, and when the fields are fresh and green, I'll take you to your home again, to that dear home beyond the sea. My Kathleen shall again return, and when thy old friends welcome thee, thy loving heart will cease to yearn. When laughs the little silver stream beside your mother's humble cot, and brightest rays of sunshine gleam, there all your grief will be forgot. Oh, I will take you back, Kathleen, to where your heart will feel no pain, and when the fields are fresh and green, I'll take you to your home The pale moon was rising above the green mountain. The sun was declining beneath the blue sea, when I strayed with my love to that pure crystal fountain that stands in the beautiful Vale of Tralee. She was lovely and fair as the rose of the summer, yet was not her beauty alone that won me. Oh, no, 'twas the truth in her eye ever dawning that made me love Mary, the rose of Tralee. The cool shades of evening their mantle were spreading, and Mary, all smiling, was listening to me. The moon through the valley her pale rays was shedding, when I won the heart of the rose of Tralee. No lovely and fair as the rose of the summer, yet 'twas not her beauty alone alone that won me. Oh, not was the truth in her eyes ever dawning that made me love Mary, the Rose of Tralee. Thank you. Londonderry Air was programmed to be sung next, but Londonderry Air is a very emotional song which carries many fond memories for a lot of us. In its place, we'd like to sing a more lighthearted song, a traditional which I understand is a favorite of Mr. Cullinane, and its text perhaps bespeaks the love for his charming wife as well. So if I may, I'd like to sing Believe Me If All Those Endearing Young Charms. Believe me if all those endearing young charms which I gaze on so fondly today were to change by tomorrow and fleet in my arms like a fairy gift's fading away. Thou would still be adored as this moment thou art. Let thy loveliness fade as it will, and around the dear ruin each wish of my heart would entwine itself verdantly still. It is not while beauty and youth are thine own, and thy cheek unprofaned by a tear, that the fervor and faith of a soul can be known, to which time will but make thee more dear. Oh, the heart that has truly loved never forgets, but as truly loves unto the close, as the sunflower turns on her god when she sets, the same look that she gave when she rose.
Richard Monroe and Joe Policelli. And now we have one last number, and we would like to try to coax President Bulger to come up. Kind of like it's like coaxing a cat to an empty bird cage, isn't it? Open bird cage.
Thank you very much, by the way, for a chance to say hello again. But I thought this was some sort of a Lenten offering that I was about to provide for you, a chance to. What are we going to do, Brian? Tell me. I didn't know. I have no idea what this is all about. We're going to sing a couple of. Why don't we have everybody sing off their program, "Sweet Rosie O'Grady"? And is that all right? Sure. Why don't we get Ted Kennedy up here, and anyone else who John Cullinane should be up here. And John Hume should certainly be up here. And Joe Moakley's gone home. I'm not one to squeal on someone, but maybe we could, we can all fit here. This is big. Yeah. John Hume, you all know, head of the SDLP, and a wonderful Teddy. And maybe we can get the real singer to help us. Is this all right?
Right. Such a backup team I've never had.
But? John? Well, we can do it right after, because after we do ours, you know.
Well, then we'll let him do his.
Yeah, what we did in rehearsal. How about Sweet Rosie O'Grady? You can't go wrong with that. How about helping us? You've got the lyrics right in your program. Everybody sing now. We desperately need your help. Sweet, sweet Rosie O'Grady, my dear little rose. She is my steady lady, most everyone knows. And when we are married, how happy we'll be. For I love sweet Rosie O'Grady, and Rosie O'Grady loves me. My wild Irish one more verse. Well, Rosie O'Grady, my dear little rose. She is my steady lady, most everyone knows. And when we are married, how happy we'll be. For I love sweet Rosie O'Grady, and Rosie O'Grady loves me. I've met some folks who say that I'm a dreamer. You can play anything you want to play over there. I've met some folks who say that I'm a dreamer, and I've no doubt there's truth in what they say. But a body's bound to be a dreamer when all the things he loves are far away. For precious things are dreams unto an exile. They take him o'er the land across the sea, especially when it happens he's an exile from that dear lovely Isle of Innisfree. when the moonlight peeps across the rooftops of this great city, wondrous though it be, I scarcely feel its wonder or its laughter. I'm once again back home in Innisfree. I wander o'er green hills and dreamy valleys and find the peace no other land can know. I hear the birds make music fit for angels and watch the river laughing as it flows. But dreams don't last, though dreams are not forgotten, and soon I'm back to stern reality. But though they pave your footpaths here with gold dust, I still will choose the Isle of Innisfree. John Hume, flown in at great expense. Flown in at great... How about, with a little bit of encouragement, we might persuade John Hume to sing that classic, The Town I Love So Well. John Hume.
This is a song written by a friend of mine, Phil Coulter, about peace in our country at this time and about my hometown. And the districts that are named, the words that you mightn't understand are districts in the town. In my memory, I will always see the town that I had loved so well, where our school played ball by the gas yard wall, and we laughed through the smoke and the smell, going home in the rain, running up the dark lane, past that jail and down behind the fountain. Those were happy days in so many, many ways, in the town I loved so well. In the early morning, the shirt factory horn called the women from Cregan, the moor and the bog, while their men on the dole played a mother's role, fed their children, and then walked their dog. And when times got tough, we had just about enough, but we saw it through without complaining. For deep inside was a burning pride in the town I loved so well. Now that I've returned, how my eyes have burned to see how a town can be brought to its knees with the bombed out bars and the armored cars and the gas that hangs on to every breeze. Now an army's installed by our old gas yard wall, and their damn barbed wire gets higher and higher. With their tanks and their guns, oh my God, what have they done to the town I love so well? Now that I've returned, how my eyes have burned to see how a town can be brought to its knees with the bombed out bars
and the armored cars, and the gas that hangs on to every breeze. Now that army's installed by our old gas yard wall, and their damn barbed wire gets higher and higher, with their tanks and their guns, oh my God, what have they done to the town I love so well? I've lost the last verse. Oh my God. No, the last verse is a moving one. Pat, what's the last verse? There was music there in the Derry air, a language that we all could well understand. When we were out in the day and I earned my first pay, there was no, I'm lost. Tomorrow, and it finishes off, tomorrow and peace once again.
John, thank you. Richard, could you lead us in our final song, When Irish Eyes Are Smiling?
Right. Please join me. When Irish eyes are smiling, sure it's like a morning spring. In the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the angels sing. When Irish hearts are happy, all the world seems bright and gay. And when Irish eyes are smiling, sure they'll steal your heart away. Just once more. When Irish eyes are smiling, sure it's like a morning spring. In the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the angels sing. When Irish hearts are happy, all the world seems bright and gay. And when Irish eyes are smiling, sure they steal your heart away.
And thank you all very much for turning out for a great guy and a great night. Thank you very much.